hard time?
Tell me about it. Tell me about your hard time.
No.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. And welcome to episode 3. Okay, so here we are once again. Considering what?
Today we are going to be talking about desire.
Okay.
So the reason for that is this week I've had some of my own insight into desire, and we've had a couple of people come to us about issues with their desire as well. So I thought
what kind of desire? What are we talking about? If you define it specifically.
Well, it materializes differently for each person. Like each issue with desire seems to be a different issue, but it all comes down to desire.
Well, it's all desire.
Yeah.
Right.
So for me personally, it has the insight I've had this week is I've seen how desire cyclically and continuously draws my attention or diverts my attention away from the things that I want to be focusing on. Yeah, I feel like...
So desire is your brain going after what it wants.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So if you have lots of desires, there's lots of things you want. Your brain is just constantly going all the time.
Yeah, like my brain would have me working a 40, 50-hour week and earning 100,000 a year to keep up with the demands of what it wants.
Okay. So what's different now? What do you want to do that's different now?
Well, for the past year and a bit, I've been working alongside you, and part of that has been to simplify my life so that my immediate needs are covered, and which then creates time and space, and I have the energy to fulfill my role in this little community that's building. I have the time to do my own disciplines, my practices. I have the time to put into the project that we're trying to work on.
So what's the problem?
So the problem is I get carried away by a desire, and then I go book in a week of work or a day of work, and while I'm at work, I kind of realize that I don't want to be there, and I'm trying to earn money to chase after yet another desire instead of focusing my attention where I want it to be, where I want to be going, how I want to live my life in order to survive.
So you're struggling.
The world.
You're struggling with focus.
Yes.
Well, the more you're engaging with desire, which is again the brain just going after what it wants. If your intention is to focus into presence, to learn to, I'll say, live with the body or abide with the body. Let's say early on in your training, you want to begin to cultivate a very, very advanced level of focus or a more advanced level of focus. And so the path of practice for that is really very simple. You pick an object or, a few objects, for example, your body, the breath, the sounds that you can hear in the present moment, and you learn to abide in those things. So you keep your attention focused in a certain way. It's really very simple. The body has essential needs. It needs to eat. It needs shelter. And, if you live in a situation where you need to pay rent, then these are very essential and simple needs of the body. If you focus on the needs of your life, and if you want to focus on the needs in your life, your mental activity will die down, because needs are very easily met, especially when you live in a community and especially when you live with other people who are supporting you to live very simply. you will have a lot of time and a lot of space to focus in on the body, to practice the various disciplines of learning to harness awareness powerfully. So that's very simple. That's very easy to do. It's very straightforward. In the beginning, though, you have to learn how to maintain focus. You have to cultivate focus, because if you have habitually chased the desires of the brain all over the place for the duration of your life, then you are going to naturally, very easily deviate from holding the focus of attention in a certain place, say, for example, in the breath or in the body throughout the day as you're doing what needs to be done. So if you're struggling with that, it's really a case of habit. Habitually, your brain is wanting you to chase after all of these objects, other objects, desires. It wants to get things, it wants to have things, it wants to have certain kinds of experiences. Or an anxiety might come to you while you're cultivating through the day and you're learning to watch presence very intimately. Suddenly your brain might have an idea that the van that you live in might break, and it's afraid of that outcome, because that would mean your van isn't going to be mobile. It doesn't want that to happen, so it comes up with some kind of scheme to get you to deviate, to run and go and earn money in a job where you have to work 20 or 30 hours a week to settle the insecurity of something that wasn't actually happening.
Yeah.
Your van hadn't actually broke.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing had happened to your van. So your brain had conjured up an imaginary fear, which you had then believed and fallen into, and it has sent you down a specific path.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, there are some things that need to be taken care of. So, there are wise things to work on. But if you've been operating that way your entire life, then your brain is just going to habitually, constantly give you anxieties and fears, and will send you down 15 different paths trying to alleviate them. The job of your meditation is to help you navigate, or if any of those fears are real. Is it, do you want to go out and earn $1,000 to have it sitting there in an account just in case your van does break? There's nothing wrong with doing that. At the same time, though, if your van breaks, could we all go to work together for a few days and earn the money to fix it after that? At which point you don't need to deviate.
Mm-hmm.
There are many different ways to approach this sort of thing. It's very vast.
Yes. Well,
your turn.
So as someone who is moving towards the path and is seeking to find stillness and to quieten their mind, their brain, quieten their brain, how do you prioritize? How do you manage your desires?
A life of very simple desires. Desire is a funny thing. Desire is really just a movement of thought. So you can be sitting in complete stillness, and all of a sudden there is a hunger feeling inside the body. If no desire arises to or from that hunger, for example, there's hunger in the body, then the desire arises to satiate the hunger. If you don't respond to that desire, you will starve. Like if you fully just ignore that impulse of the body's hunger, you will starve slowly. You're entering into fasting, and then if you still don't respond to the desire of the body to eat, you'll starve. So that's desire. But then there are other desires, like I want to become a millionaire, and so I then chase after that and go down a whole life road to go and try to fulfill that desire. Maybe I would, another level of the illusion on top of that would be that would make you happy, and that's how you find meaning and purpose. That's super duper complex. We're not really going to that level at the moment in this discussion. Like, we're not considering how many layers of illusion and delusion there are in that. There are loads. So we talk about simplifying desire. If you desire to tune into stillness and you desire to really begin to cultivate stillness, it's wise to live a very simple life with very simple desires. The simpler your life is, and the less desires you follow. So there's multiple levels to it. The less desires that you follow will train the brain to have less desires. If you have a brain that's constantly desiring things out of habit, then you retrain it by having little desire.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll still try to deviate. You just have to ignore the impulse of the brain trying to send you off down a certain path. After a while, your brain will begin to focus on the very simple desires of your immediate environment. Like when you wake up in the morning, you want to make sure that the food is being defrosted for dinner. If you don't want to do that, you won't do it. You won't follow that desire. That's a simple desire and one that a community needs. You want to go outside and make sure that the little environment, the physical space that you live in is clean and kept clean. That's a desire, but it's a very simple desire. You want to check in with your neighbor. Is there anything you need? How are you going? You want to take care of that person. That's a desire, but it's a very simple desire. It's also a very pure one. So there's lots of different manifestations of desire. The question is, what's the question?
Well, how do we prioritize our desires?
Work with the needs of the body, essentially. Start with the body, the needs of the body, food, shelter. You have a practice that you believe, I suppose. Maybe you don't yet know, but for now you have faith in the practice that you're doing, which is going to continue to cultivate awakening in your life. It's going to generate mystical experience, and it's going to strengthen your contact with awareness, okay? So prioritize your desires around that cultivation,
Mm-hmm.
those disciplines.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, serve your community, the immediate people in need around you, and they're doing the same for you. So you're all taking care of each other. It's really very simple.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody needs to eat. Everybody needs shelter. Everybody needs clean drinking water. We all come together to train at a certain time, but you have to want to do that, feed that desire. That's a great desire to have.
Yeah.
You desire to meditate. You desire to tap into very deep states of mind in deep meditation, which really does require a lot of focus. So you desire to cultivate that kind of focus. That's how you prioritize your desires. You turn your desire towards your spiritual objectives. Get really strong there, get really good there. And that process will teach you about the nature of desire. You know, you can have desires for other people, but you can also have desires for your own gain,
Mm-hmm.
your own self-centered gain, which has nothing to do with the community, has nothing to do with other people around you.
Yeah.
And a lot of people, you see it a lot in the modern world with regards to spiritual awakening. You gain insight into, or rather, you have experience of some kind in spiritual, in your meditation or in your life or in your spiritual inquiry. And then all of a sudden, you want to turn it into a business and you want to make money from it. Nobody asked you to do that. Nobody came to you asking for help and suggested or requested that you start a business teaching everybody about what you know. Nobody asked you to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You came up with that yourself. That's a self-centered objective that you have, not you, because you don't have that.
No, I understand.
But a person who might, you see it all the time, how people, this egotistical corruption of greed gets hold of the spiritual process and tries to profit from it, not realizing that actually your only objective in true spirituality is to continue to cultivate your own awakening and learn to live very simply with little desire, because when you have little desire, it's very, very easy to maintain a very relaxed, intimate relationship with the now on a very deep level, one where you can learn to abide in very deep states of mind in which your mystical experiences just continue to flourish, and your literal energy and your literal power expands and deepens, and you become more of a force for the energy of life to flow through, as opposed to you. So the ego is called a thief, as opposed to the identity, the ego, grabbing hold of the power of awakening and saying, now I want to do something with this and I want to profit from it. It steals the energy of life, the energy of awakening, and then tries to turn it into something that's self-centered, to in an attempt to create, to materialize its own profit and its own gain from that. Whereas actually to continually awaken, to continually deepen in spirituality means to continually release that self-centered principle, to abandon it and open up more, your energy and mind open up more into life, so that the literal force of life, the energy of God, if you want to call it God, the energy of life itself, can flow through you more powerfully and more intimately to reach more elements of the world that you're in, the people, the beings, the consciousness here. So the vessel that you inhabit becomes more open to that energy flowing through. But when the ego tries to get hold of that energy and identifies with it, it steals that and tries to then turn that awakening for its own self-centered objectives. So you have to abandon yourself, keep abandoning yourself. I think I maybe have gone a bit too deep there.
Well, you call it a thief, but you've also called it a thief before in that it steals your own time from you as well. So if you're following your desires, you're not abiding in the moment. So it's stealing your time from you.
Right, which is really energy. It's the same thing. When I say stealing your energy, that means your time, the energy of your life. You have a certain amount of time in a body, which means you have a certain amount of energy to apply to this process of awakening, to this process of spiritual cultivation, which is not really for you. It starts out, you think it's about your own awakening, but actually, as you get out of the way, the energy that awakens flows through you more and into the world, into the human race and the earth, 2024, at this particular time in human evolution. And so if you continually get out of the way, you then become a kind of a glove on the hand of reality, which is being used to help introduce the evolution of consciousness, cultivate the evolution of consciousness here. But you can't grasp hold of it as the glove. You can't grasp hold of the hand. Do you understand? For the glove to think that it's in control is insanity.
Right, yes.
The hand is in control. The hand is awareness. So the job of pure cultivation is continue to expand mind awareness on the daily and strengthen and deepen your ability to maintain the right view or the right perspective through your day, which is why deep cultivation becomes very silent, very intimately personal, and very, very present, and less deviation into modern economical means of personal gain and personal profit. That's the domain of the ego. Now, a lot of people don't want to hear that.
No,
they really don't.
That's where our society is. It's what it's built on. We've got all of these people running off chasing their own desires rather than what you're talking about being the glove for reality to flow.
So you have a system, a society of people who are only self-reflecting. Their experience of life is a self-reflection. The way they see the world is influenced by, in fact, governed by all of the processes in their brain, their self-consciousness, their self-insecurity, their self-anxiety, their self-objectives, their self-goals. And so most people are running around approaching life from the brain, from that illusory self, which is fraught with anxiety, stress, fear, desire for profit, always becoming, trying to become more. Constantly seeking. Whereas on the other hand, if you abandon that, if you leave that behind, you suddenly become aware of the absolute presence, the absolute already complete presence of the entirety of life, which is extremely simple and lives via necessity, need. And it's wonderfully free, boundlessly energetic, and full of love in all directions. And so you arrive there. You arrive at that place and learn to live there. And in that place is the rest of humanity. They're all there with you. All of life, actually. Nature, the earth, the wind, the stars, the whole universe lives there. But your individual sense of self is constantly ignoring that and saying me, mine, I, my, all the time, identifying as the body. It's totally ignorant of all of that life around you.
Mm-hmm.
So while you're chasing those desires, which are they have arisen from within the illusory self, all you experience is separation,
Mm-hmm.
perceptions of separateness, and you end up going to war and falling into conflict with other people, competition. Business breeds competition. Everybody's in opposition to each other, profiting from each other or trying to rise above each other. And that's what we see in the modern society. So a mystic society, a spiritual society doesn't do that. You do the opposite. You let that go, that impulse for selfish profit, self-centered greed. You just let it all go and learn to live very simply, back in touch with nature. And if you can abide in that space for an extended period of time, which means you cultivate that kind of life, your mind, I want to say your mind reconnects, but it doesn't. It's just that the rest of life comes into view again. And you suddenly, your experience of life becomes one of blissful oneness with the world around you. The last thing you would ever want to do is profit or go to war with that or hurt it. You are in just total equanimity and serenity with yourself. It's all fun. It's great. But you know, there's no... If you want to make this something for yourself, then you end up leaving that space. You lose touch with it.
Yeah.
And you just go off seeking your own satisfaction again.
Yeah.
Which has come from conditioning. So, you know, I don't really know where I'm going with that.
No, that's good. We talked a little bit about community. We are living in a small community. Obviously, we've got this mystic society building around us. And I wanted to talk about how our own desires, our own personal desires, isolate us from each other. So, you know, you wake up in the day and you serve yourself.
They can. Personal desires can isolate you.
How can they?
Well, if they have nothing to do with anyone else. If you wake up tomorrow and you suddenly think that you want to go off and, you know, you've had an anxiety overnight and now you want to go off and address that on your own, then you can do that. But what does it have to do with anyone else?
Mm-hmm.
You know, like there's other beings here. There's an environment. There's a community around you. So that would isolate you if you were to go off and follow that desire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, at the same time, if you've had an anxiety that needs to be addressed, you can approach other people, approach the community around you, and they will share your anxiety with you. And then everybody addresses it. Everybody goes to work and fixes it for you, with you. So you work together. So they don't have to isolate you. But it's when you think it's all your responsibility and you're on your own, or you go following a desire that has nothing to do with the community. For example, you live in a community of spiritual cultivators. Everybody really just wants to wake up or learn how to wake up in a day and open their heart to the energy of the present moment, right from the moment they wake up. The energy of life, fully feeling nature and being completely intimate with the now from the moment they wake up, living in harmony with that, working with that, and loving that experience, living very simply, feeling wonderful, feeling healthy, looking after the body, cultivating like energy disciplines, meditation disciplines, physical training, getting a strong, fit body that feels great to be in, and having fun, you know, simple entertainment, simple pleasures, playing games with each other, like enjoying your life. Okay, so everybody's waking up in the spiritual community and that's what they want to do. And yet you suddenly, or a person suddenly gets it in their head that they want a certain kind of car, or they want to get a really good van. You know, we all live in vans here in this community. We're travelers. And so one person wakes up and decides that they want to kind of go off and get a really good van. Well, that's nice and all. It'd be nice for you to have a really good van. But like there are three people at the moment. Everybody has a van. Every van needs a little bit of work done to it. Do you want to just kind of go off and take care of yourself? Because you can. Anyone can do that. But we can't go with you. You know? Like, because we've got other things we need to do to prioritize in the day. If somebody wants to go off and do a 40-hour work week, that's fine, but that would kill me. It would crush me. Based on where I'm at, the space that I need, and how carefully I need to manage my energy these days, and how much time I need to put into these particular states of mind and forms of practice, and how many people I have to talk with and communicate with about this stuff. I just can't go there with you, you know? So then that would be, if you were to follow that, that would be an example of how it would isolate you.
Yeah.
You'd be off on your own again, following your own tangent, because you wanted something for yourself. So, you know, there's a bit of an art to learning how to be together, really.
Yeah.
There really is. And this is probably the most important conversation that needs to be had over and over and over again in community, in communion with cultivators of the human species. Because if you, as an individual, want to elevate the consciousness of our species, it's absolutely essential that we all overcome the ego, the sense of individual separateness. You have to rise above that. You have to go beyond it and then learn how to live without that isolating perspective, without following it, managing it correctly, overcoming its insecurities, addressing them, evolving in the right way. And we have to come together to do this, because our future is together. Although a large element of society is isolating us all, putting us in little boxes, in little rooms, staring at a screen, working on our own in isolation, with no sense of nature around us, consumed by technology. That's where a lot of people are going. But actually, our true evolution is in coming together, the beings, the living beings, the real energy of life coming together, at the same time awakening through multiple forms to itself. So if you can't overcome your own sense of individualness, which makes you experience apparent separation, then you're limited in terms of how far you can evolve. So that's the next step for us all, is to overcome that within ourselves. And each one has to learn how to do that. But as we come together, it becomes more powerful. The process happens more quickly because we are cultivating in the same way, on the same page. And it's I understand it's a very difficult thing to do, because it's so tempting to try to take all of this stuff and run with it for yourself. You know, want to be a millionaire, want to travel the world, want to be a high flyer, want to take care of yourself. I understand it's very, very, very tempting to do that, but that's not the way. The way is present and full of life already. There's nowhere to go. There's nothing to achieve. There is no aspiration there. You're already there, and it's already harmonious. You just have to learn to be there with it. So you can't deviate, you know. It's very strict. It's called the razor's edge for a reason. The path of spiritual awakening, true cultivation, as in the path, is called the razor's edge because it's so easy to deviate. It's so thin, like the edge of a razor. At the same time, it's so easy to cut yourself, you know. If you mess around with it, you do it wrong, you fall back into the ego. Ideally, you turn the razor's edge onto the ego, chop through it, use the path to slice the ego apart. But you've got to do it very carefully, because the whole of your identity is wrapped up in that thing. So as it comes falling apart, you better be prepared for the process that initiates. So that's deep mysticism. We probably won't go into too much of that in public. Like, you know, that's the sort of stuff that is just very deep. We can go into a little bit of it, but that's the sort of stuff that we talk about more in private, because you are establishing the lifestyle of cultivation and you have connections, people who are looking out for you, people who are supporting you, and who are aware of the process and who are aware of what happens at the different stages of the process. When you go try doing that stuff on your own, you can kind of go a little bit mad. And then if you're going through the process of spiritual awakening and the only resources you have are people around you who aren't very deep or aren't very wise, who aren't very experienced in the process of spiritual awakening, a lot of the time they won't understand you. Now, if you're very strong, you'll still make it through that because you keep turning inward. You continue to cultivate your awakening inwardly. But it's just so much nicer to be able to do it with other people's support, knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah, it
and then
is.
to see the evolution of the consciousness around you as you are awakening is how you start to see the oneness. Like you're not actually an individual.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very deep. There's just so many levels to it. You can go wherever you want with it, really.
Yeah.
In conversation, I mean.
Yeah, well, I guess just...
Did I address the question?
You did, yeah, for sure, about how it isolates us from each other. Because I just thought it was important to raise, given that the nature of society is pushing a lot of people into communal living, and communal living going forward is necessary.
Community that serves what, though?
Well,
that's the question.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with communal living, but communal that serves what agenda? What agenda does the community serve? What are the rules established for that community? Who established them? Who established the rules of that society? For what means? The people are waking up each day to go to work. For what? Who are they working for? Where's that money going? What causes is that supporting? Because that's who they're going to work for.
Mm-hmm.
When they wake up in the day and they go to a job and they do their work at the job and they don't ask questions, they just do it. That's a cog in a machine.
Mm-hmm.
Where is the machine going?
Mm-hmm.
Who's operating the machine?
Mm-hmm.
Nobody wants to ask those questions. Is it war? Is all of that money going to war? Are trillions and trillions of dollars being spent on insanely destructive weaponry so that countries can murder and brutalize each other in the search for power? Is that where it's all going? Because that's absolutely insane if that's what's happening. Completely insane. You can't get more insane than that. You have to be so far out of touch with your heart to cultivate the death of another being. You have to be so far out of touch with that. And then to turn a country towards that objective and expect everybody to feed that agenda. Well, I mean, I don't know. The people do it, don't they? Mm-hmm. They seem to want to do it.
Yeah.
But nobody seems to want to ask that question.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, what if all of the resources were turned towards enlightenment? What if all of the resources of a country were turned towards the collective awakening and enlightenment of the entire population of the planet? Everybody was fed, everybody was housed, everybody was looked after. And true spirituality, true spiritual cultivation was introduced as a way of life. So people are going to get up and go to work in a system that's objective is to help people wake up. That's a different question. Mm-hmm. That's a mystic society. Mm-hmm. That's what they do. That's what we do.
Yeah.
Anyway, what were we talking about?
Well, just with communal living, just to bring it back to desire,
okay.
That's what you have. If you
what
have a
desire?
community that's everyone in that community is waking up every day and going off and serving their own agendas instead of serving the community and serving themselves and the people around them.
Sure.
I just kind of wanted to talk about...
What's the question?
When we when we cultivate together and when we are working towards the same common goal of awakening, how... Oh, I don't know how to word it. It's kind of obvious how it serves the bigger picture of life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, it might be to you, but you can ask the question. We can go into it. It might not be obvious to other people who want to hear it.
Yeah, well, okay, so when you've got a community who aren't waking up in a day and they're not going off with their desires and their own agendas, serving God knows what, when they're waking up in the day
God does know what.
God does know what. When they're waking up in the day and they want to serve each other and themselves and life.
Mm-hmm. The spirit of life.
How does that serve the bigger picture?
Well, because then the whole of the species evolves towards love. It's heaven on earth. It's literal heaven on earth. That's what you cultivate. Whereas war is hell on earth. Everybody's heard that. Everybody knows that. You go to war and it's just death and destruction. Hell on earth. The most horrible place to be. So the opposite, a system that would be dedicated and focused on the enlightenment of the population, moves in the very opposite direction, the actual opposite direction, where society moves towards greater spiritual expression, greater love, greater freedom, greater harmony for everyone. And it is impossible to see in very advanced states of spiritual cultivation, it is impossible to see a person suffering and not help. All of your being immediately just goes to work on the suffering that you see. When you see the suffering in front of you, your whole being just fixes it or does whatever it can to help. It can't not. So if everyone was doing that, if society was focused on that, every single issue would be addressed as fast as possible. People in need of healthcare, people in need of housing, people in need of food, people in need of mental health support, people in need of any kind would be supported and taken care of. We got a little cheeky fly flipping around on the camera. So that's how it serves the bigger picture. The bigger picture of life evolves towards love, and in deepening that connection with love and deepening the expression of love, life realizes itself. It sees oneness, and it's just wonderful. It's wonderful for everyone. So that's how it serves the bigger picture.
Yeah. You said something to me the other day about you've got a need, I've got a need. So we've got a common need here. And we've found common ground, and we're on the same planet at the same time. And people want to go and make millions and serve like themselves, but we're all here in need.
People are
in the now together.
We're all in need, yeah.
Are we alone here, or are we in this together?
We're all in need, right? We're all in need here on this earth at this time. We all need to eat. We all need a safe place to live. We all need community and connection. We are one population of human beings. We all need to live with safety and security, without fear, without threat, without insanity, so that we can continue to evolve and experience deeper and deeper states of love and freedom, connection, all of it. We all have that need. So are we all working to fulfill that need? We are. That's a mystic society. That's what we do. Just wake up each day and address the needs of the community. It's very simple. But if an individual suddenly wakes up and wants to ignore those needs and go chasing after their own desires, that has nothing to do with the needs of the community. So again, you've isolated yourself now. The ego has stepped in. The individual conditioning has stepped in and says, well, I want to do this with my life. Okay, you're free to do that, but I would suggest that you go and do that in a way that doesn't overlook or overwhelm the rest of the community here, because that wouldn't be very nice for them. It wouldn't be very fair for them. Like, it's okay if you want to go and gather all of the resources on the planet for yourself, feel free to go and do that, but you know that like those resources are really for everyone. So that's going to really isolate you. And it's also going to hurt a lot of people, because you're taking all of their resources that are supposed to be here for everyone. So okay, you have a desire to go and start up an empire of resource gathering. Can I help you do that? And I'll help you do that in a way where you're going to give all of those resources away when you get them. You seem to be fascinated with digging in the ground. Let me help you set up a mine. And when you mine, everything that you find, you're going to give it away to everyone, aren't you? Because that's what you would do. Like, you go and find precious resources that have a use for the whole of society and community, and then you're just going to give it to everyone. Oh, but you don't want to do that. You want to charge them a fortune and hold on to it yourself so that you can become a millionaire. There's a different agenda. You're not doing that for everyone else. You're doing that for your own profit.
Yeah, there's people dying and starving in the streets, and there's people with millions of dollars and mansions and cars.
Right. I did a little contemplation a while ago. So this is going back about 3 years or so. There was an event that took place all around the planet. And I met a woman who, she was a nurse, and she was going to lose her job because, there was some sort of mandate going around at the time in the world population, and she didn't want to subscribe. She didn't want to subscribe to it. So she was facing losing her job, and she was in a very, very desperate situation. She was a mother, a wife and a mother. Her partner was in a similar situation. He didn't want to subscribe. and he was potentially going to lose they were just going to lose everything, really, because they didn't want to subscribe to this very popular agenda that was going around at the time. And so I went away from this because I was in a situation where this woman wasn't talking to me. She was talking to somebody else who was in the room, and I was just observing. And I went away from this and I thought, can I help this woman somehow? Is there something I can do for her? So I sat with it, this contemplation. And I have nothing. I had nothing. I have no property. I have no resources of my own. I don't own anything. And I thought, so why is this happening for this woman? Why is she being abandoned? And I followed this train of contemplation to its root, as far back as I could take it, as to why was this going on? Why was this happening? Why can't this woman be helped? She's being abandoned by her government because she doesn't want to subscribe to this apparently optional injection. So after sitting with it for a couple of days, I started to meditate, or to kind of contemplate this idea. Like, society is ruled by greed, money. Corporations, institutions that want to make money, they want to profit. And at the time, they said they weren't forcing people. But if you're in a situation where you're going to lose everything if you don't subscribe, or you're being forced anyway, as I started to weigh up, like, what would happen why does society operate with money? What would happen if it didn't? How come, if the whole world woke up tomorrow and all of the teachers in the world who love teaching knew that they get up, they go to work to teach, and they're taken care of. They have a house, they don't have to pay for it. They have a home, they don't have to pay for it. It's given to them because they play a role in society. So all the teachers are taken care of. The doctors are like doctors who love the idea of waking up tomorrow and going to serve people and heal people. They're going to do that. They're not going to be paid for it, but they're going to do that because they love it and they want to help. So I contemplated this kind of train of thinking, this line of thinking, for a few days, and I realized that if society began to operate that way, so much bullshit would be left behind because there's no profit. There's no profit in it. A lot of like cartel members and drug dealers and hardcore criminals don't want to do what they're doing. They're doing it out of complete necessity. If they didn't have to do it, they wouldn't be doing it. At the same time, a lot of really insane and crazy behaviors that have emerged in society, you can make money from. And so people do it to make money. Like, you can be an absolute moron on YouTube and make a fortune off of ad revenue. Why do we support this kind of behavior as a society? Why do we encourage people to go that way and give them a potential avenue of earning an income through complete idiocy, and yet people are starving, apparently about to lose their jobs if they don't subscribe to these agendas, and all this other insanity is going on. So from this one kind of contemplation, I gained so much insight into the absolute insanity of the system. I mean, at the same time, I'm powerless. I'm a single person here. I have no resources. I'm not a millionaire. I'm not a billionaire. I have no interest in those things. And I started to talk to some of the people in my life. This is where I came up with the idea of a love-based economy. If we all just woke up tomorrow and went to work for each other out of love, with no question of profit, the housing crisis, the hunger crisis, all these issues would be resolved in months, literal months. Literal months. If the government suddenly woke up tomorrow and said, yeah, we've realized we've been idiots, we've been a bit greedy. These trillions of dollars that we invest every year into insanely advanced ways to murder each other, if we stop doing that and we turn all of that resources towards love, connection, food, housing, in 2 weeks, 2 months, all these issues will be resolved. Where are we being led? Where are we being led? It's clear as day. There's no question about it. But if you don't look at this stuff, but the thing is, you can't really just look at this stuff and then say, oh, okay, never mind. I'm just going to carry on doing the same thing we've always been doing. That's the problem. it needs to hit a point of complete, absolute realization, like, we cannot continue going the same way. The people that are leading us in that direction, we need to stop following them and begin to go in a different direction collectively. Now, you can't make other people do that, but you can do it. You can do it yourself. And it's very helpful if there are other people doing it too, because now you're a community. And that's where the power is, in each other. Because that's what a love-based economy is. It's each other coming together to grow together. But you kind of have to abandon the old system. You have to give up on greed, your own personal profit. And you have to stop being invested in war. All of your money, all of the tax money is being spent on weapons to murder other human beings. That's what you're funding. I know you're not doing it on purpose. Nobody wants to do that, but that's what's happening, because that's where the leaders, the so-called leaders of this society, are invested, because that's where they make all their money. I guess they find it entertaining or something. Anyway, it's an example, a demonstration, a real living example of complete insanity. It actually is. It's as insane as it gets. The Dalai Lama nailed it once when he was in an interview and somebody asked him, why didn't you fight back in Tibet? He stopped for a second. I don't even think he really thought about the answer. I think he paused because it was so obvious to him, and he's kind of confused about why this person is asking the question. He just looked at this reporter and he said, don't you know that war is obsolete? The Dalai Lama in his consciousness has reached a place where war no longer exists. It's obsolete. The very idea of war no longer has a function at that level of consciousness. Weapons are left behind. The cause of war is left behind, and your consciousness is elevated. So unfortunately, as we aspire as individuals to become hyper successful on our own, for our own motivations, we are feeding the same agenda.
Yep.
And it's just a hard truth that nobody wants to admit. You got to put it all down. Stop chasing after the same old tiresome dreams that humanity has been chasing for thousands of years. It's Roman Empire shit, like, what are we doing? We're still cavemen in the eyes of advanced civilizations of consciousness. We're idiotic, completely idiotic. And so mysticism is all about being the tip of the spear. So the first, spear is probably not a good example to use in this analogy. I don't know, the tip of something. We're the tip of something.
Oh.
The first bit to go forward. Okay, you have a spear. I'm going to stick with a spear. I know it's a weapon, but whatever. It's a good analogy. You use a spear and you pierce a target, like a hay target or something, or an arrow. You fire an arrow at a target. The very tip of the arrow, the arrow head, is the first bit to go through the target. Mystics, that's the function of mystics. That's what they do. That's what they have to do. That's where they're at. They're the tip of the spear. They have to go first. Anybody who's spiritually inclined, mystically inclined, you have to go first. And you have to forge the way forward, because nobody else is doing it, because nobody else knows how to do it. So live the example. Go first. Turn away from the principles of greed. Learn to manage desire properly. Learn to allow reality, spirituality to govern your desires. And that would bring us all together. It's plain as day. It really is. Okay, so where are we going from here? Is this touching on what you wanted it to touch on, or is it
it's
different?
gone in another direction, but
Okay.
it's like
It tends to do that.
super deep and super important to be said anyway. I don't want to try and control it at all. So, right. So
Now, all right, what are we doing now?
that conversation went very deep, and which is great, but I kind of want to bring it back again to desire. I want to talk about how does desire lead to addiction. We've got a society rampant, full of addictions, sex, drugs, alcohol,
Through conditioning.
gambling, technology.
Desire conditions the present moment. The brain is included in that. You have a desire. You wake up in the morning. You want to go for a run. If you follow the desire, you end up going for a run. So your experience is conditioned by desire. Desire that's followed determines the way that the present moment evolves, or at least your experience of the present moment will evolve in that direction. And so it's conditioned that way. So, as you're feeding, here's the thing. If you wake up tomorrow, have the desire you want to go for a run, and then you go for a run and it feels great to you, it's now easier for you to do that tomorrow because your experience has been conditioned one day of running.
Mm-hmm.
So it's now easier for you to wake up the next day and do it again. So you're programming these. This is how conditioning forms. This is how karma forms in the present moment via desire, through desire.
Mm-hmm.
Some schools of mysticism say your body is made of desire. Desire is the substance of your being. Every cell in your body has been conditioned through desire. Your body is literally the product of your parents' desire. Right? It's powerful, incredibly powerful stuff. What was the question? Oh, that was that. Does that explain it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it does.
So that's how it forms. What you are focused on, what you are feeding, conditions your experience to continue to go that way because it becomes easier for you to do it because you've already done it once.
Mm-hmm.
So you are cultivating addiction every day of your life via mental action, physical action,
Okay.
karma.
And so if someone has a desire to overcome their addictions, how would they go about that?
Stop following the desire. Stop responding to the impulse of the desire. It all starts as a desire in your brain, a thought, an impulse. And if you don't follow it, you decondition that by 1 degree. Don't follow it 100 times, it'll disappear. So you learn to stop following the impulses. And that's how you reprogram, recondition anything.
Mm-hmm.
And on a social level, if we're looking at reconditioning society towards spirituality and away from insanity, stop following the insanity. The part of you that is insane, the egoic perspective of life, it's completely insane. Its whole view of life is wrong. Wrong in the sense of opposite to reality. So if you follow it, you're going in the opposite direction to where you would be going if you were walking towards reality. And mystics obviously have to go that way, towards reality, deeper into it, more connected, more intimate with reality, in love, which leads to love, because that's what's there, deep down. That's all you are, deep down. But if you follow the ego's perspective of that, it corrupts the love and turns it towards self-centered objectives. And the end result of that is competition and conflict. So you stop following the insane impulse of the individual perspective. Just leave it alone. Don't have to stop it. Don't have to control it. In the same way that if there's a really nasty monster crying out for food in a room in your house, and you stop responding to it, it will die. It needs food to be sustained. So you don't have to go in there. You don't have to do anything to it. Just leave it, and it'll shut up after a while. But be careful, because the monster of the ego is very tricky. It'll shut up. It'll play dead. It'll pretend to be dead for a while, knowing that you're likely to open the door, and when it does, it'll snap your finger off and have a bite, and it'll be resurrected. Mm-hmm. It'll take from you again. So you leave it alone for a long time. That's the lifestyle of mystical cultivation, spiritual cultivation. Learn to leave alone the individual's perceptions for a long time, and it completely disappears. That's a spiritual awakening when that happens. There's no going back from that. It's an energetic thing. It's an experiential, energetic thing that happens deep within your being. And it's tremendously powerful. It's also very deep, and there are many layers to it. There are many levels to spiritual awakening. There's full spiritual awakening, but there are many levels to a full spiritual awakening. There are many signs along the way. There are many experiences along the way. The Buddha split it up into several definitions: stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, fully enlightened. That's 4 levels. He split it up into 4 levels. Different schools split it up into different levels. Look into any mystic, any sincere mystic or monk, enlightened monk who has written a book or left teachings in the past. They'll tell you about various levels of realization that they had along the way. There are different jhanas in Buddhism. The Taoists talk about refining the elixir, refining the immortal pill, You know, it has various stages, the spiritual embryo which matures. Anyway, yoga has its own. I'm not too familiar with it. It's very, very complex. So if you're sincerely interested in full spiritual awakening, prepare for a process. Buckle your seatbelt. Learn to sink into the now repeatedly, often, deepening, always deepening. And eventually you hit the mark. Complete dissolution of the individual's perspective. Just oneness. All there is left is oneness everywhere. All the time. No deviation from it. Unable to lose it. Unable to confuse it. Done. That's it. It's done. What was the question?
Well, how does desire lead to addiction? You did answer
Okay, so that's
question and then some.
That's how you overcome it. That's how desire leads to addiction, and that's what you do about it.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to do something about it.
Mm-hmm. Truly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you use it. Use desire. What kind of addiction do you want? You want to have an addiction to awakening? Great addiction. Use desire to cultivate that. And you'll reach a certain point with your desire before you realize your desire can govern your life on the daily so that you are living in a very specific way to cultivate deeper intimacy with the now. And then at some point you realize you have to let go of the movement of desire. You totally abandon it. And there is no more movement anymore. And in that space, very powerful and deep spiritual awakening will manifest. It'll materialize in that space with you, right there, right next to you, inside you, intimate. And that's going beyond desire. But then you can still come back from that and use desire. What are we doing here? Having a conversation around things we want to talk about, things that are important, essential elements of a mystic society. Desire, right? But it's right desire, sincere desire, pure, focused on the objective of cultivating a spiritually dominated world. What else do you want to do? What else do you want to do with your life? You know? All right.
Yeah, right priority.
Right priority, exactly. Exactly that. Yeah.
Good one. Final one.
Okay.
Final one. How does desire blind us from the truth?
Ooh, that's a tricky one. That's tricky. It's tricky on a few levels because, like, desire is a part of the truth. You know, we're talking about it here. Contemplating right desire, the right priority to govern your life through spiritual desire and desires for spiritual awakening, spiritual insight. However, the movement of desire inside the brain, if you become too obsessed with it, if you become too stuck in the movement of desire in the brain, which is the movement of thought, you just suddenly, you suddenly lose a sense of where you actually are in the present moment. It's how hypnosis works. So you can close your eyes and begin to visualize an object like a yellow tennis ball. And if you focus in very intimately on that object, that yellow tennis ball, and you can imagine the feeling of it in the body, the kind of the fluff, the fabric of it, you suddenly aren't really taking in your environment very clearly. The place where your body is sitting, the breath of the body, the sounds of the environment in the place where you are. So you can say that if you become hyper-focused on the contents of your brain, desire, thinking, it blinds you to what's actually taking place in the present moment. Now that's kind of, I don't know if the word is a faux pas, or it's kind of not really true, because actually your experience of the present moment has just been super condensed into the brain. And that's also happening right now. It's still a true experience. It's still part of the truth. But the point of, let's say, the truth of spiritual awakening or the truth of spiritual cultivation is to learn how to reconnect with a total awareness of what's happening and not be so confined to the brain, which is where your self is, you know, your identity, the processes of your identity that you're identifying with. So that kind of blinds you to what's actually taking place in the present moment. So you learn to stay out of the head, stay out of the thinking, leave it be, don't worry about it, and just learn to be more intimate with a more fuller experience of the now. That's how it's blinding.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it can blind you. Yeah. In the same way that it is called a thief, because it steals your energy, steals your attention. If you have the objective of a total awareness, and your thoughts are just constantly sucking you in, like sucking you into a black hole of darkness where you lose touch, you even forget where you are sometimes. It can blind you in the same way. That's how.
Cool. Feels like a topic that you could just really go on and on.
What does?
Desire.
Yeah. Well, it's so fundamental. It's so powerful. And it's so essential that we get our desires. We get very clear on desires.
Yeah.
There's also necessity, though. There's needs. Now, the body has needs. The society has needs. People have needs. Community has needs. Whether you want it or not, it is the case. Whether you want that or not, it is the case. So it's very wise to learn to cooperate desire and need. To learn to turn your desires towards the needs of yourself, the community, the earth, the world, life. And if you can do that, there will be total harmony between need and want, necessity and desire.
Like a balance.
But a lot of people are ignoring necessity and ignoring needs, or rather aren't very aware or aren't very knowledgeable around the needs of life. And instead they're just chasing after desire, thinking that that's all there is to it and that's what you're supposed to be doing. But what if those desires are leading you off the edge of a cliff? What if those desires are in conflict with another community? What if those desires are seeking insanity, leading to insane levels of isolation and frustration and conflict with other beings? Like, those desires are not serving the needs of life to come together and live in harmony so that everyone is safe and free to awaken. So, you need to it would be wise to learn how to bring desire and make your desire subject to the spirit of life, subject to the processes of consciousness evolution, spiritual evolution. And so if you do that, what's the word? There's lots of words for it. You're in a very, very good place. That's a very advanced way of functioning as a life form, as an entity, as a being. If the body that you wake up in is governed and functions in service to the spirit of life and the processes of spiritual evolution, so that your environment and your body and the people around you is always encouraged to cultivate greater harmony and peace and love and deepen this relationship with the now. It's just a really, really wonderful life that you can have, that we can all have, that everybody is entitled to. But there are certain elements of society that don't really support it or even really understand it or even know that it exists. So part of our job is to consider these things, introduce people to this reality, introduce ourself, our collective consciousness here to higher and higher states of functioning so that we can operate more spiritually, collectively.
Yeah, nice.
So has anything come up from what we've talked about today that you want to go into? How about you, Ryan? The distant observer. Not so distant. It's really just right here.
The ability to follow a thought to its conclusion before taking action.
Okay, yeah, all right. So I don't know if you picked that up, but Ryan is asking about something we spoke about a little bit earlier today, which is seeing all the way to the end of a thought. So if you have an impulse that arises in your body, you can follow the impulse without acting on it and see where it leads. It's called strategic thinking. And so, if you look very closely at a thought as it arises, you can see its origin. You can see what's giving rise to the thought. You can also see how if you followed that thought, your life would evolve in a very specific way. If the thought is a call to action and it wants you to do something, you can follow that and see what are the insecurities of the brain. What is it afraid of? Is there a fear at the root of that thought? Is there an anxiety? Is there something in the past? Is there a little error in the past, or a little insecurity of something that happened in the past, or an attachment to a person which has given rise to that thought? And if you follow that thought, you're going to be re-diving into and re-encouraging that insecurity to arise. So essentially what it means is you learn to contemplate your thoughts. If you've stepped out of thinking and you're observing it the same way that you can observe anything in your life with clarity, not if it's right here. You can't see it very clearly if it's right up against your eyeball, so you step away from it. You hold it away from it. You look at the thought. What's going on with that thought? Well, many things happen from this. One, you realize that you're not the thought, and that the thought doesn't have any power without you, without your input, without your permission, without your say-so, without your acknowledgement, without you holding on to it. It has no power, absolutely no power of its own. So that's another thing that you gain insight into. But what it allows you to do is to see the thought very clearly. And if you look at the thought objectively and you can hold it and contemplate it, you'll see, okay, actually that's an insecurity around a little bit of guilt about an event that happened in the past that my brain still thinks it's responsible for, which actually it wasn't, because I've learned to see more clearly that circumstance. But maybe it needs a little bit more contemplation. The circumstances that happened need a little bit more contemplation to clarify that the brain is absolutely not responsible for what happened, at which point those thoughts will stop coming up. So that's looking into a thought. If the thought is a call to action, it's trying to get you to do something or go somewhere, you just follow it in your head. Follow the thought where it's going. Don't act on it, but see where the thought is trying to take you. And if you can identify old patterns, old feelings, old emotions that are disturbing, old environments, it's trying to take you back to the same old places that you were toxic, that weren't very good for you, that were full of times of ignorance and times of, self-destructive behavior, then of course don't follow it. So that's what it means. You have to learn to witness the thinking. Don't be afraid of it. You don't have to run from a thought. It's just a thought. You don't have to act on it. And in that separate witness state that is observing the thought, well, you have all the power. You can do whatever you want with the thoughts. Okay, anything else? Anything come up from today that you want to go into more? What do you reckon, Ryan? Was that all right?
Yeah, that was
Good enough?
No, I think that's all from me.
Okie dokie.
What about you? Anything else?
No.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there then.
Alrighty.
Alrighty.
See you in the next one.
Goodbye for now.